Okay, our theme for November is No Place Like Home. You saw the Wizard of Oz, the house flying around the tornado. Anybody's house feel like that? Maybe this morning, just getting here, that was your house. No place like home. And this month of November, we often take and focus on family because leading into the holidays, for some people, that's pretty stressful. Some of you are looking forward to the holidays with family. It's just full of joy and life-giving, but other people, it's sometimes full of pain. The problem is you can't just decide this Christmas to go down the street to another family and say, I'm going to spend Christmas with you. You're kind of stuck with your family, right? No place like home. Home, family, marriage is one of the most wonderfully awful things on the planet. And that's where all the relationships that are sometimes complicated, the people who should love and support and protect you the most, sometimes disappoint you the most. So these next 3 weeks, the focus is in No Place Like Home. I'm going to unpack one verse to you today, 1 Peter 4:8, which says this, above all else, love each other deeply, for love covers over a multitude of sins. Next week, I'm not going to be here. I'm leaving tonight, heading to Hungary, spending a week in Europe. Our first set-free anti-trafficking conference for the continent of Europe is this week in Hungary. And I'm going to be there, and they're also inviting all of our missionaries from Europe, plus all of our national leaders together for a conference on discipleship. And I'll be one of the presenters, so you'll be praying for me. But next Sunday, our own Shelby Raines is going to bring the message. She's the director of Marriage Matters Jackson. Shelby speaks all around the county. They do an amazing work promoting and supporting, preventing, and helping marriages become stronger. So we're delighted to have you with us next week, Shelby. And then I'll come back the week after that, and we'll have all of our families figured out and all of our problems solved. So, all right, let's get started. Shall we? I can't speak without my slides. Here we go. I'm going to talk about an intimate family, how to love deeply. The language of intimacy comes right out of Genesis chapter 2:25. If you know the story, God made everything. He made the plant, animal world, and lastly, he made us in his image, male and female. He put the atom to sleep, split the atom in two into male and female. And at the end of chapter 2, it says, for this reason, man, an ish, will leave his family, his mother and father, and be united to his isha, Ish and Isha, male and female, and the two will become one flesh. And then it closes with this wedding language, and it says this, the man and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. Closing word of paradise. Now, in Genesis chapter 3, everything hits the fan, everything falls apart. Sin and rebellion enter into the world and ruin the whole thing. But the last verse of Genesis chapter 2 is the final word of paradise. And you'd think that that final word of paradise would be something about the weather, or there's no measles, there's no mosquitoes, but it has nothing to do with that. It's a word about relationship. The man and his wife were both naked, meaning they didn't have any clothes on, but it means more than that. They were completely exposed to each other, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and they felt completely safe. That's striking that that's the last word of paradise. In other words, paradise is a place where I can be fully known and yet fully loved. And if that's the last word of a paradise lost, I wonder if it might be the first word of a paradise found, which is to come. Christ's coming kingdom is a world where we are completely known and completely loved. And if that's true, then we need to pay attention, because the church is to be a sneak preview of a coming inevitable kingdom to a broken world. That's why we're here. The man and his wife were completely exposed to each other. They felt completely safe, which leads me to ask this question. This is not working. Do I need to hold my legs a certain way or my toes a certain way? Okay, there we go. Pose it in this question. Is there anybody out there, if they knew all there was to know about me, not just my good side, but also my dark side, my fears, my failures, and my sins, would they run away in disgust, ridicule, or fear, or would they come towards me and hold me and love me anyway? It's an important question. None of us will ask that question out loud. But all of us go through life wondering the answer to that question. Little kids, teenagers, adults, we're all asking that question. And the sad thing for most of us in a broken world is the answer to that question is a resounding no. There is no place where I can be fully known and fully loved. And so we hide, we cover up, we pretend. We do that, don't we? And I always tell people, if you find somebody like that, marry them. Because marriage is a place for you to be fully known and fully loved. And as I think as Larry Crabb said, nothing changes us so much as to look bad in the presence of love. And the truth is, most of us look bad a lot of the time, don't we? We're broken, we're selfish, we fail at so many things. This intimacy business is really profoundly important, and yet it's tricky. So I keep moving, and I translate that into 5 questions that, again, we're all asking. We never ask them out loud. Maybe once in a while we do, but we're looking to know the answer to these 5 questions. I guess you could call them 5 needs. Maybe there's more than 5, but here's 5. Am I safe? In this room, am I safe? In any setting, am I safe? Not just physically, but emotionally. Am I acceptable? That just simply means, have I passed muster with you? Do I belong? Am I capable? Does anybody think I can do anything? Does anybody think I can do this? Am I desirable? Now, I shared these questions in the discussion on addiction back in October. Maybe you were here. Am I desirable? The tragedy is in our culture, we have sexualized that word. But desirability only means this: do you want to spend time with me? So a child whose parents are too busy and always pushing them away, the child learns early on that they're not desirable. It just means, do you want to spend time with me? And then the last one is, am I not alone? Or am I the only one with this problem? Am I the only one that has this thought? And we go through life wanting to answer those questions. Now, a 2 or 3-year-old will grab a piece of paper with a crayon and draw something real fast and then jump up on your lap and show it to you with joy, right? What's going on there? They just simply trust fully that they are safe with you, and they are acceptable, and they are capable, and they are desirable, and they're not alone. A little child would do that. I don't know about you, but most of the 14 or 15-year-olds I know, they don't do that anymore. Somewhere along the line, they learn not to jump up in your lap and just show everything and expose everything to you. Sometimes it's just they grow up and they're sophisticated, but sometimes if you jump up in somebody's lap enough and you get pushed away, you'll learn never to do that again. I have parents who say to me, Pastor Mark, I don't understand. My teenage son no longer talks to me. I say, oh, really? And they describe, how he's non-communicative and all he does is grunt whenever they talk to him. And well, that might be true, but I'll guarantee you your teenage son is still asking those questions. He may not come out and ask you right out loud, but he's still wandering through life wondering, am I safe? Am I acceptable? Am I capable? Am I desirable? Am I not alone? And we never grow out of that. We look for that as adults. No matter what age you are, where you've been through, we're always wondering, is that the case? And I'm going to jump into something. This is what I do with pre-marriage stuff. If I've married you in the last few years, I've probably done this with you. This is Psychology Communications 101. We're talking about intimacy. How do we build an intimate family? And there's 2 kinds of conversation. The first is surface talk, and then I'm going to get to intimate talk. Surface talk, you can probably figure this out. Here's 4 kinds of statements of surface talk. We're all good at it. Now, the first are blanket statements. Blanket statements simply begin with this: you always, or you never, right? Anybody heard that before? You never listen to me. And I say, what? Or, you never pick up your socks. You always put work in front of me. You always watch football. Now, the truth about blanket statements is they're never true, which in itself is a blanket statement, if you hadn't figured that out. You never pick up your socks. Oh yeah, I picked them up one time. I remember I did. See? Second kind are blame statements. Blame statements just start with you. You're the reason my life's so miserable. You blew it. You forgot. You didn't put gas in the car. You. Blame statements. The third kind of statement is opinion statements. It's not about you at all. Because for me and you to talk together about us is too threatening, so it's much easier for you and I to talk about them or about it. So we talk about the weather, we talk about the lions, we talk about so-and-so, because it's too close and too awkward and too uncomfortable for us to look each other in the eye and talk about us. Opinion statements. And the last are minimizing statements. Minimizing statements are just statements that simply tell you that you're not allowed to feel what you feel. So if you get hit by, you run into a tree and you're hurting, you're bleeding from the ear, and I say to you, quit your crying, you big baby, right? Have you ever heard that before? Quit crying. I'll give you something to cry about. That's a minimizing statement with gasoline poured on it. You're not allowed to feel what you feel. So get a life. Get over it. Just, toughen up. So we're good at those statements, and there's many more kinds. I can come up with a lot more. And there are families that are really good at this. In fact, they're so quick and witty. If you have dinner with a family, it's hilarious. They're so good at those surface statements. There's a different kind of conversation, however. It's called intimate talk. And there's only two. The first are feeling statements where you simply say, I feel. I feel. I come home from work and I say to my wife, I feel really discouraged. I feel excited. I feel like a failure. I feel tired. I feel scared. I feel anxious. Those are feeling statements. Now, this is not a feeling statement. If I come to you and I say, I feel like you're a big jerk, that's not a feeling statement. Because that's not about me. That's something else. Feeling statements are about you. It's a disclosure about you, an honest disclosure about you, as is the second one, expressions of desire. It would mean a lot to me if we would stay home tonight and sit by the fire and just talk. It would mean a lot to me if we would go to White Castle for dinner. Yeah, that's probably not a good choice. You hear about that White Castle had coupons for food and they wouldn't honor them because they don't serve any there. Anyway. I love White Castle. My wife always says, Mark, I would love it if you'd rub my feet. If I'm watching football or whatever, I got to rub her feet. So, expressions of desire. Now, here's the thing about these expressions of feeling and desire. Remember Genesis 2:25? The man and his wife were both completely exposed to each other and they felt completely safe. These two statements, intimate talk, statements of I'm feeling or I desire, this is what it's like. It's exposing yourself to the other person. It's almost as if you just open up your robe and you say, here I am. And that's really risky. It's even scary, because when you do that, you express a feeling or desire, you can't control the other person's response. They might care for you, and then again, they may just blow you off, brush you off, or push you away. It's very risky. And if you're living in a household where if you learn early on expression of a feeling or desire and you get trampled on, you'll learn quickly never to do that again. That describes a lot of households where that happens. Let me give you some examples of this. By the way, do you recognize that? I don't know how they got that picture. Maybe it's just a computer rendering. That's an iceberg. You know what an iceberg, a little chunk of ice, but underneath is this whole thing. And there's this statement, a minimizing statement, if there ever was one. Why are you making a mountain out of a molehill? Well, the answer is because the molehill's really a mountain. So here's my picture of an iceberg. You know, an iceberg, that line across the top is the water level, and the only thing you can see is that little chunk of ice on top. That's what you can see. That's what is, in any situation, that's what's being said or what happened. But underneath, there's something much more going on. Now remember our verse, 1 Peter 4:8. Love each other what? Deeply, for love covers over a multitude of sin. We're going to get to that. So here's a picture of John and Jane. John's driving, and they're both in the car, and they're going down M60 right through Spring Arbor, and John's going 75 miles an hour. And just as soon as he whizzes by the police station and the township office, Jane is doing what? Her hair blowing straight back. She is pushing on that phantom brake. Doesn't your car have one of those on the right side? I mean, dealerships will sell you that extra. Every car has that phantom brake. She is pushing on that thing, looking at her husband in disbelief, and he's just happy as a clam, going 75 miles an hour right through Spring Arbor, right by McDonald's. And she's about to say something. What could she say? You have all kinds of options. I can hear them. Slow down. You always go too fast, right? You can see it. That's surface talk. And if he's really good and quick-witted, he can say, oh, look who's talking, Miss Leadfoot. You who have 4 traffic tickets in the last 6 months, you see? And this is what happens. Above the surface, one person throws a grenade and the other person throws a grenade, and the conversation stays up there, and pretty soon you got a fist fight or a food fight. And it's amazing in marriage how people have file cabinets of history on each other. Don't you have that in your marriage? And at the right moment, you pull out a file and you play it against your partner. We all do that. And it just keeps the argument above the surface. Now, here's the deal. And you can be really creative of what kind of conversation they could have by the time they get to Hutch's. He's driving too fast. What do you think Jane's feeling right now? Fill in the blank. She may not be feeling safe, or she might be really not just getting into an accident, but afraid of getting a ticket. Maybe their insurance rates will go up or whatever, all kinds of things. And what if he's never listened to her? You can see that just accumulates. It's just this kind of a history that makes it worse. Well, here's the deal. Jane has an option right now. Even though he's driving too fast and he's the one causing this friction, she has an option in the moment to take the conversation down to a deeper level. And by doing that, she expresses either an I feel or this is really easy, this is really basic, or an expression of desire. Give me an example. I feel like you're a big jerk. No, that's not a feeling statement. She would say something like this: I'm not feeling safe right now. It would mean a lot to me if you'd slow down. It's hard to do when you're going 75 miles an hour, right? But it's also pretty risky to do, because here's the deal. As soon as she does that, as soon as one person has the courage to take the conversation down there, now John has a choice to make. He can choose to keep the conversation up there and just trample on her by saying, oh yeah, you got 3 tickets last month. Or he might say, oh, you're just saying that because you heard Pastor Mark's sermon. Or he could choose to come down and care for her and say, you're right, I'll slow down. It's not rocket science, but it's the difference between a marriage that's intimate and a marriage that's moving towards health and a marriage that's just continuing to cement bitterness. Here's another example. 11-year-old Benny, after school, got into a tussle in the hallway. You've seen it 1,000 times, and he got into a fight, and he got the short end of it. He got a bloody lip and a puffy eye out of it, and a teacher broke it up and dragged both kids to the office, and they called the parents. And so Benny's dad has got to go to the school and get his son, and by the time he gets there, the other kid's dad had already come, and they're gone, and Benny's in the principal's office with a bag of ice on his face, and Dad comes in there and has a short conversation with the principal, then grabs his son, and out the door they go. Now, what's that dad going to do? You can just picture what your dad may have done. Maybe it's not even easy to predict what a dad would do. Some dads would grab their son and march out the school a little faster than normal with a little firmer grip on the kid's arm. And as soon as they get out the door, would let the kid have it. Say, how many times have I told you not to get into fights at school? And if you do get into a fight, you're not the one to start it, but if someone else starts it, you're to finish it, and all that stuff. But what is Benny feeling? And you know what happens at fights in school? Was your school like my school? As soon as there's a fight in the hallway, what happens? The whole county shows up. The whole school district shows up in the hallway, and kids are egging you on, and everybody sees. And when you get the short end of the stick, what might he be feeling? I'm not safe. I just got beat up. I am no longer acceptable. I am not capable. And I'm not desirable. And I'm the only one that got beat up today. I mean, you can imagine, that's traumatic for a kid. Some of you remember what that felt like. And then dad, with the wrong kind of words, can just pour more salt into that wound. You are really not acceptable. You're not capable. Why would a dad do that? In most cases, it's a dad who's also, his tank is empty. A dad who's in a hurry, a dad who doesn't feel acceptable, capable, desirable, not alone. And his kid getting into a fight causes dad to lose points. And we as parents, we do that all the time. So we act harshly, we act abruptly, and we say things we shouldn't say. But if dad whose heart, his tank is full, what an opportunity. Walk kid out to the car, and the first thing, give that kid a hug and say, you know, when I was your age, I got beat up by a girl too. Instead of going home, why don't we go get a milkshake and I'll tell you about it. And in a moment, a father chooses to meet his son, and it doesn't take much, just one word can pour gold into that boy's life, to love each other deeply. I'll give you one last one. 16-year-old Michael just turned 16. He's at the dinner table with his family, mom, dad, 3 little sisters, poor kid. And you can hear the banter at the dinner table, and they're talking about the day and what some teacher did and some funny thing a kid did in the lunchroom, and they're going back and forth, and most of it's surface talk, which is okay. And then Michael, in a moment, in a pause in the conversation, takes a deep breath and brings the conversation to a deeper level, and he says this summer I'm going to get me a job and buy me a Camaro. He saw it on Craigslist. It's $2,000. It only has 3 wheels, but he thinks he can do it. Can you imagine how risky it is for a kid to do that at a dinner table with 3 little sisters? What's he asking? 16 years old. I mean, it could be a number of things there, but one thing we can be sure of, he's putting his toe in the water, great risk, wondering, is there anybody here who thinks I'm a man? Pretty risky, isn't it? And you can just hear what's going to happen. 3 little sisters, as soon as he says that, they just howl. Oh yeah, you're going to get a job. You can't even make your bed. And you can just hear it. And then dad, who may not be thinking very quickly, jumps right in with his bull elephant voice, and he launches into this conversation about responsibility. You have no idea how much money it takes to get a car and gasoline and insurance and license and on and on and on and on, right? Anybody have a dad like that? I probably would do that, right? But if a dad's tank is full, he'll recognize a moment. He'll recognize that has nothing to do with the Camaro. It's his son taking the risk, saying, does anybody here think I'm a man? Because today it might be a Camaro, tomorrow it'll be something else, but the question's always the same, you see. And a dad who's quick enough to recognize a moment can just in a moment pour gold into his son's life. And all he's got to say is this. After all the banter stops, he'll say, wow, that's a great dream. I hope you do it. Pass the potatoes. And in a moment, there's a conversation in a moment can change a child's heart. And we who are parents and we who are spouses and we who are siblings, how many moments are there in a day? Above all else, love each other deeply. Because love covers over a multitude of sins. So I could end with that and just say, okay, now you all go out there and you practice real hard so you do that. And of course, it does take practice. But I don't think that's the way to find an intimate family. You look at those 5 questions, am I safe, am I acceptable, am I capable, am I desirable, am I not alone? And you read the Gospels, and all of a sudden it's amazing to see how Jesus answers those questions. Am I safe? The night before he was about to be crucified, he told us, he said, in this world you're going to have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. Am I acceptable? I think of his words to a sinful woman, a prostitute, who wept at his feet, and he just looked at her and he said, "Your sins are forgiven." She was so unacceptable in her world, and he welcomed her. Am I capable? I think of the night before he died, he said to the disciples, "You're going to do even greater things than I've done." That's just unbelievable. But Acts 1:8, he said, "You're going to receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you." Am I desirable? I think of when he came to Jerusalem, he wept over the city. He said, "Oh, Jerusalem, how I've longed to take you in my arms as a hen gathers her chicks. But you wouldn't have me." Or in Matthew 11:28, he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and you'll find rest for your souls." He longs for you. Am I not alone? Oh, and he said, "Surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age." If you look at the Gospels and look at Jesus' life and words, you see those messages coming through every page, every page. And the church is to be the visible expression of Jesus in the world today. The church is to be a place where we find safety, acceptance. And the household is a microcosm of the church. Your home is to be a little church. So a Christian home isn't just a home that prays before meals and goes to church and they don't sell drugs. A Christian home is a home that learns to love deeply. And the answer to becoming an intimate home is not to just go home and practice and try harder, although it does involve that, but the way it is to go home and accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Let his grace, his forgiveness, his love fill your tank, and out of the overflow of your heart, you'll be able to pour good things into your children, into your marriage. Because when your tank is empty and your time is short and you're in a hurry and you're anxious, we're not able to pour good things into our loved ones' lives. But when Jesus fills our tank, it's amazing the implications of that. This business of being a Christian is far more profound than we would ever guess. So I close by saying this: let Jesus be your Savior. And take your wife, take your husband, take your family off the hook. Does that make sense? Let Jesus be the one that makes you okay, and that sets you free to pour good things into those around you.